here was the big one that I wanted to pause on. This is why I said, go watch March 2021 Price List Update Summary, because I'm going to condense this section because we talked about the big changes, but here's another change. The descriptions and assumptions in the labor supporting events for demolition in new construction labor efficiency have been adjusted from 30 minutes to 60 minutes of drive time. Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Price List Update Summary. This videos are brought to you by Actionable Insights. You've got Harrison here, and you've got Whatley there, looking good. What's up, Whatley?
What's up, buddy?
We are here with the April rendition of the Price List Update Summary. We've got about 31 new line items to talk about in this month. It's good, though, to note some of the ideas and concepts we're going to talk about in this video build off of last month's March 2021 Price List Update Summary. Was still one of the biggest changes we've ever seen to the Xactimate price list. So I strongly recommend, if you have not watched March 2021 Plus yet, either do so right now before watching this video, or be sure to spend some time after this video this week to get caught up on all the changes that happened in March. On top of that, if you learn from these price list update summary videos and you want to learn more with Actionable Insights, we have an Xactimate estimating and digital assets class coming up at the end of this month. April 27th through the 29th, this class will be streaming online, live. Anybody can attend from the location of their choice. As of right now, we only have 6 seats left. So end of the month class, Xactimate, you want to come join and learn more about this kind of stuff with us? Highly encourage you to do so before that class sells out. Now, Wadley, are you excited to get into the April Price List Update Summary?
I am, especially because it's a nice follow-on to March. It rounds out a lot of the significant changes that we saw last month.
All right. As a reminder of this video series, Xactimate publishes new line items every month. They change line items in their price list every month. And so our goal is to kind of preview what came out, why was it adopted, how is it intended to be used, and to kind of clarify the intent of the pricing department as they release these new update summaries every month. So in April, we've got 31 new line items to look at. On my screen here on the left side, I've got X1 open, April 21 price list. I've added all the new line items. On the right side, you're going to see the e-service center link. This is the text that Xactware publishes every month. And so we're going to add some purpose and context to this text in this video series. All right, let's start. Number one at the top, we've got a new line item for a plumbing gas airline pressure test. This is one that we've been thinking about, talking about for a while. So what are your thoughts on the introduction of this line item here?
Well, I think it's a long time coming. It kind of offsets the ELE megalometer test. I'm probably mispronouncing that. Somebody's really disappointed in me somewhere, but you guys know what I'm talking about. If you guys do large scale electrical work, it's a good idea to have megalometer. Yeah, it's a good idea to have your electrician go ahead and test the new circuitry, the panel, etc. Same thing goes, especially in California, which we know well. If you're going to have SDG&E or a like utility, pull the red tag. It's not only electrical. Often they're going to come out with the building department. You try to actually meet both of those parties at the same time. If you're a builder and really dialed in, they're going to ask, the building department's going to ask that you have pressure tested your nat gas. They're really big on that. And that can be done by pressurizing those lines without natural gas, or even with natural gas, and then using a little bit of soap and water around the new fittings for the supply lines, maybe under the house, so on. So that's one aspect of it, how this line item can be used. Also drain lines. This is where the test plugs come in and so on. They would have us fill up our drain lines with water to the top, put the OD test plugs in the top, and then have it sit there for 30 minutes. And then they would have us pull the test plugs and make sure that the water was still at the same height, right? And so this is what that line item can be used for. And as it alludes to in the additional item information, this can of course be used for pressurized water lines. So it's really 3 things that this particular line item can be used for. So natural gas, your drain line assemblies, and your water supply lines.
Well said. Adding to that, 3 new HMR line items, plastic dumpster liners. We've got a 20 yard, we've got a 30 yard, we've got a 40 yard. You and I, in preparation for this, we're looking at some photos of dumpster liners to give an example here. But I know mostly we actually wanted people to understand why this line item was added. And we came to OSHA regulation 1926.1101 I2. states in part that, an open top dump trailer with a gasketed door and tarp cover would be acceptable if it is also equipped with a commercially available bladder bag, spreader bag, or simply fitted with a sufficient liner. So these 3 line items here, 20 yard, 30 yard, 40 yard in the HMR hazardous material category code are related to that liner for dumpsters in hazardous material, asbestos removal, etc.
You got it. Yeah, so this is just in response to the ever-changing requirements imposed upon environmental contractors by DOSH, really, which oversees OSHA. I used to think it was opposite, but as I understand it, DOSH is kind of the holding company for OSHA, but those requirements are ever-changing. But it seems as though putting a plastic dump liner in your roll-offs is otherwise required now and supported by that law that Harrison just outlined. So now the pricing department has responded to that credibly. This is cool. So now you can include that as warranted.
Yeah,
if you're somewhere in a rural area where you don't even have to dump asbestos in any particular place, I don't think it's warranted to use this line item. But if you're in California, for example, my goodness, like, go for it. And I have friends who have been fined for, this is a true story, like throwing double bag goose necked asbestos, like chrysotile asbestos, in a roll-off dumpster, and there was just a little bit of drywall debris or texture debris right outside the dumpster, and they got fined like 10 grand for that. So out here in California, I don't know about every other state, folks, but they do not mess around. So they want to see those plastic liners. It's one of the quickest ways to get fined. I suppose the thought is, Harrison, if you're throwing the compromise or you're throwing that hazardous building material in a dumpster and it rains, what's going to happen with all that runoff? And California worries a lot about runoff. So here we are. There's the liner. That's why it needs to be gasketed, and that's why they want the liner.
Big ocean right next door. So makes sense. Let's actually add one more thing to this line item. If you note, looking at the components, there's only one component in this line item. It's a material only line item. So this is not, they even said this excludes the contractor labor to actually fit and close off the liner, and suggesting line items like HMR, LABH, like, hazardous material labor, if needed, in order to install, apply, get the policyholder reimbursed for the costs associated with fitting the dumpster itself with this material only liner.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Good to see. This is why we dive into the details of every line item to look at the potential labor, material, and equipment components, and to figure out, often they have necessary information in the excludes. If there's one thing Actionable Insights is all about, is we want people to enjoy what they do in this industry. And when line items are confusing or not clear, there tends to be arguments or confusion or just general friction in the process. So it's nice to see these kind of things fleshed out and discussed in a platform like this. All right, moving on. I've got 8 line items on 8-foot doors. Notice these are all in the door category code. We've got different selector codes, but you've got a solid alder panel door, solid mahogany panel, solid oak panel, solid fir door paint grade, panel stain grade softwood. I could just keep naming the line items here, but you can see what they are to take a look here in the changes here from their eService Center link. But 8 line items on 8-foot doors. So nice to have the options. Obviously, these line items or these materials were being used in the field, and people didn't have a line item to be able to invoice for them appropriately. And so now that can be addressed, helping claims that involve alder panel doors, mahogany panel doors, etc., to resolve faster, reducing cycle times. Good.
Yeah, that's good. Well, they've gone down this route with doors, which is remarkable. Like, hats off that they're managing, got to be 70 or 80 line items for all the different nuances of doors between, being solid, and now they're breaking it down between the wood and the oak and the alder, mahogany, so on. That's a lot of work to introduce those new line items, maintain them. Just note the difference here, folks. Like with cabinets, they didn't do that. With cabinets, you've got economy, standard, average grade, high grade, which really in the spectrum going all the way up in deluxe and premium and custom. High grade isn't actually high grade. It's maybe more mid grade. Anything newer build, like I'd say 2008 and after, is probably falling in like high grade thereafter, with the exception of like an apartment, low income apartment build or something. But with cabinets, they didn't take it down, Harrison, like for each and every type of wood, right?
And paneling, et cetera. Yeah.
Right, and they did that for doors. I don't know if that's a route that they maybe regret, but it's interesting. Once you start going down that route, you kind of feel obligated to like round it out. So they have a lot of choices for doors, and they also have a lot of choices for windows. Windows have followed suit in how they've trifurcated the aluminum windows versus the wood windows versus the vinyl windows, right? So for both windows and doors, there's a lot to choose from. So be thoughtful with how you're matching up your actual door line items as it relates to your P&T staining line items, pre-staining, and whether you're using the line items that like really reconcile with the core line item that would precede it.
100%. Got to check what's included. Got to check what's excluded. All right. Next section, roofing and panel line items. Looks like we have a collection of 7 line items here. You got some wall roof panels corrugated, galvanized versus agricultural, metal roofing corrugated, metal roofing clear skylight panel. So these are all pretty standard. We've seen similar additions like this over the last year and a half, trying to provide some options in the corrugated metal roofing sections.
Yeah, and we've seen some attention. This is kind of a coverage C, other structures play. So we've seen quite a few line items for the agricultural type things. So this is an extension of that attention that the pricing department. What have we seen? Like we've seen other structure, we've seen commercial.
Yep.
They've been deploying more time and attention towards adopting new line items for those specific cases.
Yep. 2 that you and I dove in a little on prior to the recording this video, the pitch pan pocket. So we have, this pitch pan pocket, PVC TPO, the roof penetrations going into the property.
You got
It's nice to have something like that.
So it's not a drain assembly. Some folks might read that and think it's a drain assembly for TPO. It's really not. So you could penetrate something for electrical or mechanical, and it would come up and through, and then you'd use your Henry's tar on top, so the water would cascade down and around. So it's like a flashing assembly. So good addition. And again, that's a commercial play. It's a commercial line item, falls in suit.
Yep. And then we have the roof scupper here as well for PVC TPO clad aluminum as well. So both of these line items have been added for options to be able to put those out there.
Yeah.
And then
one clarifying thing about that TPO clad aluminum, even this picture here, that's like an odd install coming off the top of the building. A lot of times when you see a scupper drain, it's going to be down towards the bottom. This becomes especially true when you see a big brass like cow tongue, which is also a scupper drain, like commercial, how it'll discharge the water down there maybe 2 feet off the ground. That's an odd build. You wouldn't really typically, like that picture illustrates, want to be cascading water off the top of a roof like that. But I'm sure there's some reason. But this is an aluminum clad scupper drain, so that's going to be a lot cheaper material than like a big brass cow tongue that you would see in a commercial environment. I don't know if there's a cow tongue one. If I was using in a commercial build scenario, Harrison, that line item's close enough. I would just make, what I thought to be warranted adjustments to the components build up to help make up for any deficiency for what the material price structure would be. But aluminum clad's going to be wildly cheaper than like a solid brass. Can you pull up a cow tongue like I'm talking about?
Cow tongue scupper. Oh, yeah. Google.
See that alone, right? You're looking at $700 for stainless brass, $121. So just look at what the materials price is for the aluminum, and then go, okay, is there a deficiency here that would warrant? Gosh, you can look at the difference in price, right? $725 versus $185. It just depends on what building material you're using, but 100%. Very similar.
All right, Whatley, what would it be? A new price list without a collection of new cleaning line items. Our favorite category this week or this month in the edition, we've got golf bags, golf clubs, and pet carriers, normal sized, average size, large size, and small sized. So if you're out there using content track or invoicing for contents in Exact, new options for you: golf bags, golf clubs. Got to clean them. If they're affected in a loss, got to clean them. So it's nice to have those options. Not only did we talk about the 31 line items that came out in April, now we need to talk about line items that changed from existing line items from March to April. Now, normally when we start this section, we start off with changes to components, changes to yields, things that affect the RCV or unit price of these various line items. But in April, got a big zero. No significant changes to any kind of components, yields adjustments, things like that. Somewhat indicative of giant changes in March. Reminder, go watch March 2021 plus Price List Update Summary. But we do have some additional item information changes. All of these are clarifications on the use of a line item. So the first three up here, we've got a removal activity code, the minus, for eave trim, gable trim, steel rake, gable trim. And the note here from Xactware says, added text to note field of the removal definition to clarify that the items removal activity assumptions are intended to represent when the eave trim is being removed and the adjacent field materials is not being removed. And if I jump into the additional item information of one of these examples, this is the April price list, so we can see the new change and the new note. Roofers will generally include the removal of the eave trim in the per square foot removal price of the roofing material. So when you're quoted, what does it cost to remove it? They're generally including the eave trim, et cetera, in that assumed cost. This removal activity is intended to be used when the eave trim is being removed and the adjacent field material is not being removed. Ultimately, how this is estimated is up to the parties involved. Nice to have that disclaimer so that people can just kind of discuss what's real, what's happening, and address the loss at hand, making sure that things are the way they need to be. But where does these kind of clarifications come from? Obviously, people were using a removal roofing line item and complementing it, flanking it with additional eave trim, gable trim line items, et cetera. And Xactware is coming out and saying, hey, that's actually assumed in those costs. But in the unique scenario where you are just removing the gable trim or the eave trim, here are the line items for those specific activities. Additionally, quick changes to the aluminum sliding patio doors, anodized, different sizes here. You know, what is this? You'll see some of these star line items. What that really means is all line items related to it. So if there's MTLEAT and additional numbers and letters in the selector code, it's reflecting all potential selector options. For these patio doors, it says added text to include that the plus replace definition of these activities, the patio door handle would be included. So obviously there was confusion as to whether or not the actual handle was included or not. And it's saying right here, sliding patio door with handle, screen, wood shims, and installation labor. So
restorers were adding a lock set or whatever to their sliding glass door, but they ship as part of the actual sliding glass door assembly itself. So that was a good addition.
Yep.
Both of these updates are carrier centric for both the roofing and for sliding glass doors, but I personally just appreciate the fact that they're willing to clarify it. You know, when we leave too much ambiguity, it makes it difficult to settle a claim. So depending on what side of the claim you're on as you're watching this, like this particular change went the carrier direction, but it really is done with an eye towards, you know, probably the overarching mission of Xactware is helping the user base settle claims faster and in a more noble and efficient way. And so that's exactly what they did here. They clarified their intention.
And not so much a technical change, just the clarification around why the line item was intended to be, how it was intended to be used, what's included, what's not.
Good point. That can be just as important, right, as a yield adjustment or a price. Some people are like, oh, the labor price. Well, like, have you considered how yield relates to labor? It's just as important as they have an inverse relationship. Moreover, what does the additional item information say? Is this included or excluded?
Yep.
Those type of things all have tremendous interplay with what the actual bottom line of the claim value is.
Love it. All right. Anytime Xactimate is clear as to what it includes and excludes, clear for a carrier and a contractor to coordinate and collaborate. Xactimate is a tool, right? It's a language for those two. When the language becomes more clear, it tends to let people actually enjoy what they do a little bit more. So that's a big goal of ours here at Actionable Insights. Now, material components were added. We do need to say RIP to the rod stick hockey table line items. Those have been removed from the price list. You and I do not see many removals. I think about a year ago, we said goodbye to the iPod Shuffle.
Yes.
Then now we have to say our goodbyes to the rod stick hockey table. If you've got one of those and they're in a loss, good luck. It's gone now. You can't buy it anywhere.
I don't even know what that is.
That's the rod stick.
So our Canadian homies, can you tell us what's going on here?
In the comments below, send us a picture of your rod stick hockey table that we can give it its fair goodbye. We'll make a social media post about it and say RIP. Just make sure you save those things because there's no way to get them back in insurance-related claims in Xactimate. All right, miscellaneous changes. At the bottom of this, Xact always has some kind of extra context as to other changes that were made to the price list. Georgia, you've got some remapped price codes. Fringe benefits were updated in labor burden across the board. But here was the big one that I wanted to pause on. This is why I said, go watch March 2021 Price List Update Summary, because I'm going to condense this section because we talked about the big changes, but here's another change. The descriptions and assumptions in the labor supporting events for demolition, in new construction, labor efficiency, have been adjusted from 30 minutes to 60 minutes of drive time. So last month we broke it down, the giant change for restoration remodel, which is normally when Xact is most heavily used, the restoration remodel estimating and invoicing, moved from a 30-minute drive time assumption for driving to the job site, pick up material and equipment, to 60 minutes, and how that raised the overall basket of goods that Xact measures the price list by around 5%. That was a big upward change in the overall pricing of Xact's price list that they put out. Well, they have made that similar change, that exact change, to demo and new construction. The reason why I wanted to pause on it here is because they have done that for new construction demo. Whatley, while I shift up these screens and talk about new construction versus remodel, restoration, etc.
Like the great debate of the last decade, what warrants new construction? So if you're a restorer, you're generally going to come at this and say, if it's what you call a scraper, where we're taking the property down to the slab, typically after a fire, and you're building that back up, your claims consultant at JS Held is going to advise you to use new construction. And that may be warranted. Where it gets really wobbly is like where some of the structure, it remains intact and you're rebuilding some other portion of the structure. And is new construction warranted or not? Think about it like this. If you have a plumber coming out to a property and they're replacing angle stops for you on a 3,000 square foot home, there might be 23 angle stops that they're going to need to replace. And there's significant efficiency with calling out your plumber just to go and do your rough in and then drop your angle stops for all your penetrations for your plumbing. If they could do 23 at the same time, as opposed to what do we see in a claims environment day to day? We're going to have our plumber come out and they're going to replace 3 angle stops. So hot, cold underneath the sink to maybe include like an angle stop for the dishwasher supply line to the extent that it's not just tacked on to the existing hot side. So maybe they're going to do in 2 or 3. Point is that plumber is going to charge you a minimum of $350, $375 where I come from. And if you had them do all 23, you might get that done for $800 straight away. And so what is going on with the new construction is they're recognizing the efficiencies there between large scale work of the trades versus doing the one-off piecemeal stuff or like a put back. And that's recognized to be supporting events traditionally.
Yeah, we work in wacky environments.
Yeah, you got it. But you'll see what inefficiency average between 25, 38% for supporting events in a restoration environment. When you click the new construction button, that's going to retard that back about 10% right there, which is going to, decrease your pricing overall. And so that's what checking that particular box does. And so just be aware of that impact and know that there's some debate about it and it's not super clear and nobody's ever bothered to really clarify when new construction would be warranted or not. It's just one of those things in this industry that everybody's still trying to figure out and it's still up for debate. So keep that in mind moving forward. All right. So what do we have here, Harrison?
What I want to actually look at is March 21 on the left side. I've got a new construction box checked estimate, and I've put in a demo related line item. So RFG 300, we know the removal activity uses the demolition labor trade code, as you were referencing earlier, as we talked about in the past, as well as a demo laborer. Then I've got the same thing here in the April 21 price list, same exact line items here, but these are new construction both sides. So first thing to note, the demo laborer went from, in general, didn't change from March to April. It's 50 to 77, 57 unit price. So the actual labor rate didn't charge. But if you'll note, the unit price went up for this demo labor related line item. And the way we can look at that is let's take a look at March supporting events in new construction. If I come here and I hit edit on my labor, I can see that the overall support, it's the demo 2 LAB supporting event, and the overall inefficiency was 33.33 in a new construction environment and supporting events. Now, if I come here to this line item over here, we'll jump over. I got to get to I'll make this one a little bit bigger so it's easier for me to see here. Come over to the unit price. We're going to take a look at the inefficiency here, hit edit. It's now 39.583. So an additional about 6% in inefficiency. So the supporting events for drive time, material equipment pickup for demolition related line items in new construction changed from 30 to 60 minutes. It went up. We saw those big changes in March 2021, so it's important to note they have made that change to the new construction demo related line items in Xactimate.
Yeah. I don't know how much is this going to impact claims in so much as so often like demolition is done like by hour or like by square foot, it's just typically you wouldn't do a full build back that using that technical of line items just for the removal of it. But it's interesting that they made that adjustment. It's definitely restorer centric. I'm just not sure how often it's going to come up. But the other line items, it might observe it the same in similar way for when you're doing a scraper and how you're actually invoicing for it. But boy, that's kind of the Wild West. How do you invoice for when you're doing a scraper? Like on the demo side.
Yep.
Not super consistent.
All right. That's everything we got for the April price list update summary. For some perspective here on what's coming next month, looks like we've got some hydronic solar panels and additional items to remove tile, cement, backer board. So until then, good luck settling claims out there. All the best from Actionable Insights. If you are using these new line items, if you have questions about these line items, hit us up in the comments. Feel free to use our line item request form on getinsights.org right over here. Help us understand what's happening in the field that there's no line item for, because we can field that data and amplify your guys' voices as to what you need in terms of line items from the Xactimate price list to help you settle claims efficiently, nobly, swiftly, etc. So thank you, Whatley, for jumping on the call with me for today while we went through 31 new line items and additional changes to the Xactimate price list. And we will see you guys in May.
Keep making it happen.